Basketball season is almost here. What should we expect from this year's Northwestern men's basketball team?
You are Locked On Northwestern, your daily podcast on the Northwestern Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. This is Locked On Northwestern, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Carter Bird. And yeah, as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, we bring you your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Northwestern your first listen for anything and everything Northwestern. We love talking about it. We are available wherever you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever. We're also available on YouTube if you want to watch the video version of the podcast. Just search Locked On Northwestern. You can find us wherever you listen. Make sure you turn on notifications. You leave a comment, you leave a review, and you give us that feedback because we're trying to improve the show every single time we hop on the mic. But yeah, let's talk about Northwestern basketball. It's been a long time coming with head coach Chris Collins going into year 10. Some people are kind of curious about what this season holds and what the future of Chris Collins' tenure at Northwestern is. Well, let's start with last season. Last season, Northwestern went 15-16, 7-13 in conference play. 12 of the 16 losses were single-digit losses, so they were in a lot of games, even late. They had some notable wins. They beat Georgia in the Legends Classic 78-62, getting a big Power 5 win there. They won at Maryland 67-61, at number 10 Michigan State 64-62. Against Rutgers in overtime, 79-78. Then followed that up with a win at Nebraska, 87-63, a dominant win in that one. And then beat Indiana 59-51. All three of those kind of coming in a row. Nebraska, they went and beat them at home, 77-65. So the Minnesota 75-62 on senior night. The last game of the regular season. Turned around first game of the Big Ten tournament, won 71-69 against Nebraska, and completed really a 3-game season sweep of Nebraska last year. They were 10-6 at home, 3-8 on the road, and 2-2 in the neutral site. Last year, they scored 73 points per game, which is good for 121st nationally. They allowed 69.9 points per game, 198th in the country. They shot 42.7% from the field, good for 257th in the country. They allowed their opponents to shoot 42.8% from the field, which is 155th nationally. They were okay shooting the three, 34.7%, 118th in the country, but allowed their opponents to hit 36.9% of their threes. That's for an abysmal 334th in the country. They did not shoot the free throw particularly well, 71.9%, 166th in the country. They were an okay, not good rebounding team. They were 35.5 rebounds per game, 155th in the country. They allowed their opponents to out-rebound them with 36.4 rebounds per game, so 0.9 rebounds more per game than they got on their own. But those rebounds allowed per game, 287th in the country. So definitely near the bottom of the country in that category. This team did actually have a lot of assists last year, 15.8 assists per game, good for 27th in the country. 6.5 steals per game, 131st in the country. 3.5 blocks or 5.1 steals per game, Actually, sorry, 5.1 steals per game by their opponents, 18th in the country. So they didn't get the ball stolen from them very often. They took care of the basketball. 3.5 blocks per game, 131st in the country. Their opponents blocked them 3.6 times per game, which is 280th in the country for this Northwestern team. They had 9.8 turnovers per game, which is 347th in the country. So there were a lot of there weren't a lot of steals by their opponents, but they did turn the ball over a fair amount. They forced 13.5 turnovers per game, which is 245th in the country. And then finally, fouls, 17.6 fouls per game, 106th in the country. 17 fouls by their opponent, while for drawing 17 fouls per game, 208th in the country. There, when you look at this team, they have a couple key losses, and it starts with Pete Nance, leading scorer on last year's team. Was a senior forward, 6'10", 225-pound guy. Was a 3-year starter. 27.2 minutes per game last season. 14.6 points per game. 6.5 rebounds. 2.7 assists. 1.1 blocks. 0.3 steals. Shot 49.7% from the field. One of the better percentages you'll see out of the people that played heavy minutes for Northwestern. 45.2% from three, so could kind of stretch the court some when he did shoot threes. 76.8% free throw percentage, and he ended up transferring to UNC, kind of following that direction, not to the same school, but to a rivalry very close by. Ryan Young, 17.1 minutes per game last year. Junior, another forward, 6'10", 245 pounds. Started as a freshman, was kind of a key reserve the last few years. 9 points per game, 4.2 rebounds per game, 0.9 assists per game, 0.3 blocks per game, 0.4 steals per game. 55.9% field goal percentage, 16.7% three-point percentage, and 67.6% free throw percentage. He transferred to Duke. So you have those are your two biggest holes you got to fill on this roster going forward this next season. Both of them are in the front court, and that's been pretty gutting to this Northwestern team. It's going to be some big shoes to fill for the incoming pieces that we'll get to in a little while, but it definitely has not been easy when you lose that type of production, when you lose your leading scorer and then one of your top front court guys as well, back to back to Duke and UNC. Chris Collins actually had kind of a joke about it, that, you're doing something right development wise when Duke and UNC come and take a couple of your guys, but it's it'll be interesting to see how Northwestern fills those holes. I think it'll be a challenge for this Northwestern team. And in a second, we're going to take a look at who's coming back. I mean, who are guys that are coming back that can help replace that production? Who should you keep an eye on? Those type of things just coming up here in a second. But first, let's talk about our friends from Simply Safe. The numbers don't lie. In the last decade, over 4 million people have chosen Simply Safe Home Security to protect their home. You don't earn the trust of that many people without doing something right. At Simply Safe, your safety is the only thing that matters. I know, because I use Simply Safe in my own home to protect everything that I own, basically. They protect you with cutting-edge security technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who always have your back. With 24/7 professional monitoring, Simply Safe's agents call you the moment a threat is detected and dispatch police or first responders in an emergency, even if you're not home or can't be reached. Simply Safe blankets your home in protection with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door, HD security cameras for inside and outside your home, smarter ways to detect motion that only alert you when a threat is real, and even hazard sensors that instantly detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. There's been moments where, moving in, you need to make sure that your house is protected, and I think that's been something, just a peace of mind that Simply Safe gives me by having it protect my home. But you can go customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplysafe.com/lockedoncollege. Save 20% on your Simply Safe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month free. Visit simplysafe.com/lockedoncollege to learn more. There's no safe like Simply Safe. All right. So now that we've talked about last year's Northwestern team and the key losses of Pete Nance and Ryan Young, and let's take a look at who's coming back. Who's coming back? How can that production be replaced this season? And you start with second leading scorer on the team, Boo Buie, senior, fourth year starter this year, 6'2", 180 pounds. Last year played 30 minutes a game. 14.1 points per game last year, 2.5 rebounds per game, 4.3 assists per game, 0.1 blocks, and 0.8 steals per game. 39.7% field goal percentage, not particularly great there. 34.1% from three, not great there either, but I guess effective enough to respect it. 79.6% free throw percentage. He's a streaky shooter kind of guy. He protects the basketball, doesn't really turn it over that much. He distributes the ball well. Sometimes he can shoot the ball too much. He can have bad shot selection. Maybe if the weapons around him step up, that kind of evens out and the shot selection gets better. And those percentages go up. That 39.7, that 34.1. Maybe you see those kind of take a tick up this season. Next up, Chase Audige, another guard, senior. Former William and Mary transfer, was a starter there for 1 year, and he's 2-year starter so far at Northwestern. 6'4", 200 pounds, 26.8 minutes per game last season, 9.8 points per game, 4.2 rebounds, 1.9 assists, 0.3 blocks, 1.8 steals. So he goes and gets some steals on the defensive side of the ball. This is where the numbers are not very good, though. 33.8% field goal percentage, 25% three-point percentage, 71.7% free throw percentage. All three across the board, not great, especially out of a guard that you need high-level production out of, especially with the players that left the program this past season. You need somebody who can shoot for a better percentage than 33.8%. That's not good enough. It's not going to get it done for Northwestern this season. He does not have good shot selection. He's pretty inefficient. He doesn't get fouled enough. He doesn't get to the line enough. I was just reading around, saw where some people compared him to Lakers Russell Westbrook, which is not your best comparison. It's not what you would like to be compared to. An extremely inefficient player in his own right there. Next up, you have another guard, Ty Berry, junior. Started about half to over half of the games last year. 6'2", 190 pounds, 22.1 minutes per game last year. 7.4 points per game, 2.3 rebounds, 1.1 assists, 0.1 blocks, and 0.7 steals. 38.8% field goal percentage, but was 38.8% from three-point as well. 66.7% free throw percentage. Look, he's your three-point shooter. He's your guy that you're going to rely on to shoot in volume and hit it at a pretty high clip. 38.8% is pretty solid. The 2-point field goal percentage is not very good. I believe it's 38.7%. And you would like, if you're that good of a three-point shooter, you would like that free throw percentage to be higher than 2/3. Could he be somebody that steps up, becomes a volume shooter for this Northwestern team, and provides a spark on the perimeter? I think he can. They've talked about how he has responded well this offseason. Back half of the year kind of got replaced in the starting lineup. He's responded very well, according to his teammates, according to Chase Audige. And then let's see if he can build on his performance so far. Next up, guard Julian Roper, sophomore, started basically the back half of the year when he took that starting role from Ty Berry. 6'3", 180 pounds, 20.2 minutes per game, 4 points per game, 3.4 rebounds, 1 assist, half a block, 0.9 steals, 34.2% field goal percentage, 35.3% three-point percentage, and 71.4% at the free throw line. This is a well-rounded player, plays a lot of defense, brings a lot of stuff to the table in terms of energy and effort and defense. Not a lot on offense. Only 4 points per game last year, 34% field goal percentage. The 35% from three is solid. I mean, it's nothing to write home about, I guess, but it's enough to be respected. Can you see a tick up in that? Can you see a significant tick up in field goal percentage? Can you see him emerge as more of an offensive threat? That's going to be something that I keep an eye on. Next up, Robbie Barron, Ford senior, 6'9", 215 pounds, 3-year starter, 21.9 minutes per game, 6.4 points per game, 4.3 rebounds, 0.6 assists, 0.7 blocks, and 0.7 steals last year. 46.8% field goal percentage, 36.6% three-point percentage, 75% free throw percentage. He's pretty efficient. He's pretty efficient. One of the higher field goal percentages. You would like him to continue to see improvement there. 36.6% three-point percentage as a Ford, as a 6'9" guy. It's pretty strong. It's pretty strong, and I think it allows him to help stretch opposing defenses. He does have that stretch factor in his game, but with the subtractions in the front court of Ryan Young and Pete Nance, a lot more is going to be asked of Robbie Barron this year. Can he step up? Can you see that 6.4 points per game turn into a 9 or a 10 maybe? Can you see that three-point percentage hold steady, that field goal percentage hold steady, maybe even tick up a hair, and more production on the offensive side? That's going to be what I have my eye on with him. Next up, Ford Brooks Barnheiser, sophomore, 6'6", 215 pounds, 7.5 minutes last year, 1.7 points per game, 0.7 rebounds per game, 1 assist, 0.3 blocks, and 0.3 steals. 23.1% field goal percentage last year, 18.2% three-point percentage, but was 83.3% from the free throw line. Production was not there at all last year. But when you listen to them talk about how much he's improved this offseason, gives you hope as a decently highly rated recruit out of Indiana that he can take that next step forward and become a threat, especially because you kind of have to figure it out in the front court with your forwards. And I think he could be somebody kind of in a small forward role. If you go really small, I guess he could play down low at the 4, but I think that he's somebody who needs to take a significant step forward this year. Next up, Matthew Nicholson Jr., or Matthew Nicholson, a junior. Sorry. He is a big guy, 7 foot, 255 pounds, 4.4 minutes per game last year, 1.8 points, 1.3 rebounds, 0.3 assists, 0.2 blocks, 0.2 steals. 69.2% field goal percentage, 52.9% free throw percentage. He's big. He's really, really big. He's physical. He's going to have to, when this Northwestern team plays big against the big men in the Big Ten, he's going to have to be huge. and you listened to Chase Audige, Bo Bowie, and Chris Collins talk about it at Big Ten Media Days. He's also, I mean, Audige said he's been the MVP of the offseason. He's been the most impressive guy to this point. And I think that that's something key to highlight and something I want to see just how much he did improve. Because he played sparingly last year, was decently efficient on the offensive end in his sparing minutes. But he's going to have to play a significant role this year. Next up, Roy Dixon, the third senior, smaller guy, 5'11 guy, 2.2 minutes per game last year, 0.3 points, 0 rebounds, 0.3 assists per game, 0.2 blocks, and 0.2 steals. Former walk-on. Don't really see him having any sort of a role on this year's team. Kind of continuing that 2.2 minutes per game. I don't think you're going to see a lot of him this year. But who knows? I mean, injuries could stack up. You could see him thrust out there in some moments, but I doubt it. But that's the group of returners. You've got there's definitely some things to build on. You've got a strong point guard. You've got an experienced two guard next to him. You've got experience in the backcourt and around the perimeter for sure. Then you've got some forwards that maybe have not had to forwards and centers that have not had to take a significant step forward into significant playing time. You might see that. You're going to have to see that, actually. Can they step up? Can they give you the production you need to win? That's going to be the question with this Northwestern basketball team this season. But who's coming in? Who's coming in? Who are the incoming players? And how can they help kind of fill the holes on this roster? That's going to be what we talk about here in just a second. But first, let's talk about our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sport wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to BetOnline or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right. Big thank you to our friends at BetOnline. We use them for our Pick'em segment every Friday. But let's talk about these incoming additions and how can they incoming additions and maybe some takeaways from what we've talked about today. Things to look out for. But we're going to start with a forward, a transfer, Titus Verhoeven, senior, 6'9", 225 pounds, a UTEP transfer. Last year, he was at Duquesne, and then he transferred to UTEP, played a couple of years, and then has now transferred to Northwestern. Last year at UTEP, 6.6 points per game, 4.6 rebounds, 1.1 assists, 1 block, and 0.7 steals. 51.2% field goal percentage, and a 68% free throw shooter. He's a mobile guy back there. Chris Collins talked about that at Big Ten Media Days. He's going to have to be somebody who plays a decent role on this Northwestern team. There's holes to fill, and things got to be figured out for sure. He's going to be somebody that I look for. You could see him in the starting lineup in Game 1. I mean, who knows, really? Next up, you've got a couple freshmen. Nick Martinelli, freshman, 6'6", 200 pounds, 3-star. Number 54 small forward, according to 247. Number 7 player in the state of Illinois. He's supposedly a good shooter. There's not a lot of information out on him out there. I believe his brother was a walk-on at Northwestern previously. And you need somebody who can kind of come in, and if he can be a legitimate threat from deep, he'll get minutes. If you can shoot and play some defense, They will find a role for you just about anywhere in the country, and he's supposedly a good shooter. We will see. Kind of will be interesting to see what his role is going into this season. And then finally, this one's interesting based on the way that they have talked about him. Ford Luke Hunger, freshman, first-year player, 6'10", 255 pounds, three-star, number 201 national player in the country, number 40 power forward, number 5 player in Canada, according to the 247 composite. Big guy, tough guy, self-proclaimed toughest player on the basketball court. If you listen to him, got a lot of praise at Big Ten Media Days. He's a skilled guy. I think they expect him to play a role right off the bat this year, a decent role. And I think that he, of the 2 incoming freshmen that you can find the legitimate recruiting profiles for, Hunger has the best shot of the 2 to get on the court, play a role, potentially play a significant role. But that's probably the incoming guys to keep an eye on. Takeaways kind of from the whole thing. It's going to be really tough to replace Nance and Young with the pieces you have. You didn't bring in like a just dominant transfer or a dominant high school player. Worried about the front court holding up. New faces thrust into new roles there. How do they handle that? That's going to be fascinating this year. Something that potentially I'm worried about. And then does the shot selection improve, especially on the perimeter? With Bowie and Audige, do you see smarter shots? Do you see good ball movement off of them? Does that help that field goal percentage for the team, and specifically for those 2 guys to rise? So it was not great last year. Can you see their numbers tick up as a result of that? Can they rebound with the big boys in this conference? That's going to be a question, because you've got people who haven't really been in a role where they have to bang bodies down low consistently, with guys like Hunter Dickinson and the other big men around the Big Ten. 5 of the top 7 scorers are coming back. The perimeter is going to carry this team. When you listen to Chris Collins talk, 59.6% of the minutes off last year's team return, which is the 3rd best in the Big Ten. But I mean, I even though you have that, I am concerned about depth. I think this team has a chance to be sneakier and scrappier than people are banking on them being. But time will tell. And it's going to be interesting to watch them kick their season off here in a few weeks. That's going to be what I'm watching as we approach basketball season in Evanston. But yeah, so I mean, we kind of recapped what it was last season, looked at what was lost off the team, looked at the returning players, and then we looked at the incoming additions and how they can impact this squad. It's probably going to do it for today. Thank you for making Locked On Northwestern your first listen for anything and everything Northwestern. We really appreciate it. We're available wherever you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever. We're on YouTube. Just search Locked On Northwestern. Wherever you listen, make sure you turn on notifications and subscribe. Make sure you leave a comment. Give us give us some feedback. Give us a review. We'd love to improve the show. And look, as Big Ten fans, we need to know what our teams are up against across the Big Ten with Locked On Big Ten. Everyday host Nate Dickinson and the local experts of Locked On take you across the Big Ten in 30 minutes. Make Locked On Big Ten your second listen. Locked On Big Ten. But anyway, thank you for listening. I'm your host, Carter Bird. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at CarterBird13. We will be back this week with more episodes as we start to talk about Northwestern's upcoming game against Maryland in football. and how they can tackle that game on Saturday. But until then, see you next time.